Admiral Cracksake stood before the holographic display, his forearms crossed in satisfaction as he watched the replay of their bombing runs. The human colonies on Proxima B burned beautifully in the artificial dawn of plasma bombs. Their primitive shelters, those pathetic concrete and steel structures, melted like sugar in acid rain. Behind him, the bridge crew of the Zendarian flagship Ultimate Victory worked in practice precision, their scaled skin reflecting the red glow of emergency lighting. "Send my congratulations to the bomber squadrons," Cracks announced, his voice carrying that special tone of smugness that only came from crushing an inferior species. "And prepare my report for the High Council. They'll be pleased to know we've eliminated the human threat with minimal casualties on our side." Commander Lix, his second in command, approached with a data tablet. "Sir, preliminary damage reports indicate 98% destruction of all major human settlements on Proxima B. Their orbital defense stations have been reduced to debris, and we've detected no surviving military vessels in the system." Excellent. Crax's secondary heart swelled with pride. "You see, Commander? This is why the Zendarian Empire has ruled this sector for 10,000 years. These humans thought they could expand into our space, establish colonies without our permission? Ha! Such arrogance from a species that barely mastered faster than light travel." "Indeed," Admiral Lixix agreed, though something in her voice wavered. "Though, there is one peculiar detail in the after-action report." Cracks waved one of his lower hands dismissively. "What could possibly matter now? We've taught them their lesson. The survivors will crawl back to their homeworld and never dare venture out again." "Well, sir, during the attack we intercepted some unusual communications. The humans weren't begging for mercy or calling for help as expected. Instead, they were laughing." Crax's antenna twitched in amusement. "Laughing? Perhaps we drove them mad with fear. It happens sometimes with primitive species." "No, sir. They were sending messages back to Earth. One in particular was repeated across all channels. It said the dragons are awake now. May the gods have mercy on their souls, because we won't." For the first time since the attack began, Crax felt an unfamiliar sensation crawling up his spine. Dragons? What nonsense is this? Some human mythology to comfort themselves. Before Lix could respond, the ship's sensors screamed to life. Red alerts blazed across every console, and the bridge erupted into chaos. "Admiral," the sensor officer's voice cracked with panic. "Massive energy signatures detected. They're coming from Earth's direction." "Impossible." Crax rushed to the main viewport, all four hands gripping the railing. "Their fleet was destroyed. Their technology is centuries behind ours. They can't possibly." His voice trailed off as space itself seemed to tear open. Through the quantum rifts emerged shapes that defied comprehension. Ships. No, not ships, leviathans of metal and energy, their hulls adorned with patterns that seemed to shift and move like living things. They made the Zendarian flagship look like a child's toy in comparison. "Status report," Craxx demanded, but the words barely left his mouth before the first human vessel opened fire. They shot a beam of pure, concentrated something passed through their strongest shields as if they weren't there. It struck a Zendarian cruiser, and the proud warship simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, just gone, erased from reality itself. Sir Lix whispered, her scales pale with terror. "I believe we may have made a terrible mistake." Crax couldn't respond. He was too busy watching as more rifts opened, disgorging an armada that shouldn't exist. The humans had hidden this. All this time, they had this power, and they chose not to use it. They had played weak, played primitive, until someone was foolish enough to attack their colonies. The realization hit Crax like a quantum torpedo. The humans hadn't been expanding into space out of arrogance. They weren't weak. They had been peaceful by choice, and his empire had just given them a reason to show their true nature. "Send word to the High Council," Crax ordered, his voice barely a whisper. Tell them we just woke the Dragons." Grand Analyst Pix stared at the data streams flooding her screens, her tentacles twitching with increasing anxiety. For 3 days straight, she had been monitoring the bizarre transmissions emanating from Earth, and nothing made sense. Nothing. play it again, she commanded her assistant Nexus. And boost the signal clarity by 30%. The audio filled her research chamber. It wasn't a transmission in any language she recognized. Instead, it was music, a haunting melody that made her chromatophores ripple with unease. The humans were broadcasting what appeared to be a symphony across all known frequencies, drowning out normal communications with orchestral movements that somehow felt like a countdown. "They're mocking us," Nexus suggested, his eye stalk swiveling toward the main display. "After we destroyed their colonies," they respond with, "entertainment." Pix shook her head, sending ripples through her bioluminescent crest. "No, this is something else. Look at these energy readings. Every time the music hits certain notes, we're detecting quantum fluctuations throughout the entire sector. It's like they're using the music itself as some kind of coordination signal." Before Nexus could respond, their emergency console lit up. Admiral Krax's face appeared on screen, looking considerably less smug than during his victory broadcast 3 days ago. "Grand Analyst, please tell me you have something useful about these human vessels we're tracking." Pix quickly pulled up her latest findings. "Admiral, their movement patterns defy all known laws of space-time. They're not using conventional FTL drives. When our long-range scanners detect them, they're simultaneously appearing in multiple locations, as if what Krax demanded. As if they exist in several dimensions at once. We track them in one system, but the quantum signatures suggest they're actually present in dozens of places simultaneously. It's like trying to catch smoke with a net, sir." A new alert blared through the facility. Nexus rushed to check the incoming data, his normally blue skin turning pale gray. "Sir, Grand Analyst, we're detecting massive energy spikes near the Helios defense platform." They watched in horror as the supposedly impregnable Zendarian defense station, housing over 10,000 of their finest warriors, simply folded in on itself. Like a piece of paper crumpled by an invisible hand, the massive structure collapsed into a point of light no bigger than a star, then vanished. "By the first egg," Krax whispered. "What weapons are they using?" "That's just it," Admiral Pix replied, her voice trembling. "Our sensors detect no weapon signatures. No energy beams, no projectiles, no exotic particles. It's as if they're simply rewriting the laws of physics in localized areas." Another alert, then another, and another. Across 3 sectors, Zendarian outposts were going dark, not destroyed, simply removed from existence, along with the space they had occupied. The music, Nexus suddenly said, "It's changing." Indeed, the human broadcast had shifted. The symphony now carried notes so deep they made the very walls vibrate. And beneath it all, a voice spoke. Not in any alien tongue, but in perfect Zendarian. "You took our children from us. You burned our homes. You thought us weak because we chose peace. Now witness what dragons can do when they stop holding back." Pix's analysis systems crashed as space itself seemed to tear open around their research station. Through the rents in reality, they saw them vast shapes that hurt the eyes to look at, geometric impossibilities wreathed in energies that shouldn't exist. "Admiral," she whispered, "I don't think these are ships we're seeing. The energy patterns, the dimensional signatures. I think these are just the projections of the actual vessels into our limited space-time. We're seeing shadows of weapons that exist in dimensions we can't even perceive." The music reached a crescendo, and with it came the humans' coordinated attack. Across 50 star systems, carefully hidden Zendarian military installations simply ceased to be. No explosions, no debris, no dramatic last stands. Just gone, excised from reality with surgical precision. "Attention, Zendarian Empire," a new voice boomed across all frequencies. "This is Admiral Sarah Lynn of the Earth Defense Force. You have 1 hour to begin full military withdrawal from all occupied territories. This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat. This is mercy. Something you failed to show our colonists. We are being kind enough to give you a chance to run." Pix looked at her readings one last time before sending her final report to the High Council. The conclusion was simple: they hadn't been observing a primitive species playing at being a galactic power. They had been living next door to giants who chose to walk softly. And now, thanks to their own arrogance, they had given those giants a reason to stop whispering and start roaring. The music played on, and with each note, another piece of the mighty Zendarian Empire simply vanished from the galaxy. Chief Archivist Mira Voss of the Zendarian Historical Institute had never seen the Grand Archive so busy. Teams of military analysts and researchers crowded every terminal, desperately searching through centuries of human surveillance data. Their orders were simple: find out how they missed this. Look at these construction records, she announced to the gathered emergency council. 200 years ago, when we first encountered humans, they were barely reaching their moon. We documented everything: their primitive rockets, their clumsy satellites, their struggling space program. Commander Jix, who had replaced the disgraced Admiral Craxax, leaned forward. And it was all a lie. Mira brought up a series of holographic displays. Not the early history that was genuine, but around the time they achieved their first faster-than-light travel, something changed. Look at these energy readings from their solar system. The display showed Earth's star system from 150 years ago. At first glance, it looked normal, a developing civilization taking its first steps into space. But when Mira adjusted the quantum filtering, by the first egg, someone whispered. The entire Sol system lit up like a quantum supernova. Structures the size of planets phased into view, previously hidden behind veils of carefully manipulated spacetime. Shipyards that dwarfed gas giants. Research stations that coiled around stars like metallic serpents. They didn't build this in response to our attack, Mira explained. These structures are old. Very old. They've been there the whole time, watching us watch them. But how Jix demanded. Our surveillance networks. We're seeing exactly what humans wanted us to see. A new voice joined the conversation. Dr. Amanda Reeves, their captured human anthropologist, entered the chamber flanked by guards. Despite being a prisoner, she carried herself with unmistakable authority. You're going to tell us everything, Jix growled. Amanda laughed. Oh, now you want to listen? Funny how that works. She walked to the holographic display, gesturing at the revealed structures. Humanity reached a crossroads about 2 centuries ago. We had achieved quantum manipulation technology, unlocked the secrets of dimensional engineering. We could have dominated the galaxy then and there. So why didn't you? Because we remembered our history. Every time a more advanced civilization encountered a less advanced one on Earth, it ended in tragedy. We didn't want to be the conquistadors of space, so we made a choice. Operation Sleeping Dragon was born. She waved her hand, and somehow, despite being a prisoner, she accessed the display controls. The hologram shifted, showing massive structures unfurling like mechanical flowers. We hid our true capabilities, presented ourselves as a young, ambitious, but ultimately unthreatening species. We established colonies, traded with other civilizations, shared some of our lesser technologies, all while keeping the dragons asleep. Dragons, Mira whispered. Your planet-class warships. Amanda's smile turned predatory. Oh, those aren't warships. Those are construction vehicles. Let me show you a real warship. The hologram shifted again. Something emerged from behind Jupiter, a vessel so vast it made the gas giant look like a marble in comparison. Its hull was composed of overlapping plates that seemed to move like scales, and arrays of devices that hurt the eyes to look at dotted its surface. That's the Test Leviathan. First of the Dragon-class quantum dreadnoughts. It doesn't just travel through space, it rewrites the laws of physics around itself. The ships you've seen so far, those are its escort craft. The room fell silent. Mira's archives had records of wars going back millennia, of weapons that could shatter planets. Nothing came close to this. But why maintain the deception, Jix asked. Why play at being weak? Because we genuinely wanted peace, Amanda replied. Humanity remembered its own violent past. We developed these weapons not out of aggression, but as the ultimate deterrent. We hoped that by appearing harmless, we could build diplomatic relationships based on mutual respect rather than fear. She turned to face the council, her expression hardening. But you had to go and bomb our colonies. Do you have any idea what you've done? Those weren't just human settlements you attacked. They were quantum research stations, disguised as primitive outposts. The energy release from their destruction has cascaded through subspace, waking up defensive systems that have been dormant for generations. New alerts flashed across the displays. Across human space, massive structures were phasing into normal space orbital rings around every human world, defense platforms larger than moons, and things that defied classification. For 200 years, humanity has been the equivalent of a quantum-capable civilization choosing to live in a wooden hut, just to make our neighbors comfortable. Amanda continued. We endured your empire's arrogance, your trade restrictions, your thinly veiled contempt. We endured it because we believed peace was worth the price of humility. The hologram showed more Dragon-class vessels emerging from hyperspace, their very presence causing gravitational distortions. But you just had to push us. Had to prove your superiority. Congratulations, you've managed to do what a dozen other aggressive species couldn't. You've convinced humanity that the time for playing nice is over. As if to punctuate her words, one of the Dragon-class vessels demonstrated its power. It didn't fire a weapon, it simply altered the quantum state of an entire asteroid field, transforming 1 billion tons of rock into energy so pure it existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The dragons aren't just awake, Amanda said softly. They're angry. And they're hungry. Still think bombing those colonies was a good idea. Mira looked at her historical records, then at the displays showing humanity's true face. Everything they knew, everything they had assumed about the galaxy's power structure, had been wrong. They hadn't been dealing with a young species playing at expansion. They had been poking a sleeping giant with a stick, and now the giant was standing up. War Minister Thaxon watched his empire crumble on a dozen displays, each showing a different system falling to human forces. The proud Zendarian defense grid, built over thousands of years, was being dismantled with terrifying precision. Status report from the Centauri front, his aide announced, voice trembling. The quantum barriers have failed. 3 Dragon-class vessels just rewrote our defensive algorithms. Our most advanced AI systems are now running basic mathematics puzzles, completely useless. Thaxon slammed his fist on the command console. What about the fortress worlds? Surely Nexus Prime still stands. A new hologram materialized, showing their supposedly impregnable fortress world. The massive planetary shield generators still functioned, their purple energy field protecting the surface. As they watched, a human vessel small by Dragon-class standards, barely the size of a moon, approached. What are they doing? Thaxon leaned forward. Those shields have withstood direct hits from supernovas. The human ship didn't attack the shields. Instead, it projected some kind of quantum field that intersected with the shield harmonics. Where the energies met, reality itself seemed to hiccup. The mighty planetary shields didn't collapse or explode, they simply changed phase, transforming from energy barriers into an array of pleasant-smelling flowers that drifted away on the solar wind. Minister, another aide, rushed in. The humans. They're not just defeating us, they're humiliating us. Look at the thorax system. The display shifted. The thorax system had housed their largest military shipyards, protected by automated weapon platforms that could track and destroy targets moving at faster than light speeds. The humans hadn't destroyed the weapons. They'd transformed them into elaborate orbital art installations, each one now projecting 3-dimensional poetry about peace into space. Get me Admiral Krax, Thaxon demanded. He started this disaster, he can face the consequences. Sir. Admiral Krax's flagship was last seen near the remains of the human colonies. The humans didn't destroy it. The aide swallowed hard. They turned it into a memorial museum, with the crew frozen in time inside. They're still alive, still conscious, but they're part of an interactive historical exhibit about the folly of unprovoked aggression. Panic was spreading faster than any official orders could contain it. The Zendarian Empire had never known defeat. They had no protocols for this kind of systematic dismantling. Reports flooded in from every sector. The quantum defense network around Zendaris Beta, reprogrammed to broadcast human entertainment shows. The antimatter production facilities in the Gamma Cluster, converted into public gardens that somehow functioned in the vacuum of space. The dreaded planet killer weapons platforms, now generating sustainable energy for formerly impoverished worlds. Sir, his senior tactical officer spoke up. I think I understand their strategy now. They're not just beating us, they're showing everyone watching that our most powerful weapons are toys to them. Each demonstration is more elaborate than the last. A new alert flashed Priority 1 from their furthest colonies. The humans had deployed something new. Thaxon felt his heart skip beats as he read the report. Phase shift technology, he whispered. But that's theoretical. Even our best scientists said it was impossible. The footage showed human vessels literally phasing through solid matter, passing through planetary crusts like ghosts. They could selectively decide which laws of physics applied to them at any given moment. Minister, we're getting reports from the Capital Defense Fleet. The humans, they're singing. Singing. Yes, sir. Every human ship is broadcasting the same song. Our linguists say it's an ancient human battle hymn called Never Gonna Give You Up. They're playing it while systematically rearranging our fleet into a three-dimensional art piece. Another screen showed the pride of the Zendarian Navy, over 3,000 warships being carefully positioned into a floating sculpture that, when viewed from a certain angle, spelled out "Think about your choices" in perfectly formed Zendarian script. Get me a line to their command ship, Thaxon ordered. Surely we can negotiate. They're responding, sir. But it's not what we expected. The main screen lit up, showing not a human bridge but what appeared to be a comfortable living room. A human sat in a relaxed position on something called a couch, drinking a beverage. This is Fleet Admiral James Thompson of the Earth Defense Force, the human said casually. I'd love to chat, but I'm actually in the middle of my coffee break. Your entire defense network is currently being reprogrammed by what we call a background app. It's like having your civilization conquered by our equivalent of a smartphone game. Thaxon felt his legendary composure finally crack. What? What do you want from us? Thompson sipped his coffee. Oh, we don't want anything. We're just making sure you understand exactly how badly you miscalculated. Did you know your shield generators can be turned into ice cream dispensers? One of our junior engineers figured that out this morning. She's 12, by the way. Thought it would be funny. As if to prove his point, alerts showed the primary defensive installation of the Zendarian Third Fleet was now producing something called Rocky Road in significant quantities. 7 centuries of research into quantum mechanics, dimensional engineering, and technological development, Thompson continued. All of it carefully hidden because we wanted to be friends rather than conquerors, and you just had to go and bomb our colonies. The human stood, and somehow this casual movement seemed more threatening than any weapon. Here's what's going to happen next. We're going to finish our coffee break, and then we're going to continue systematically demonstrating just how outmatched you are. Not because we need to, but because apparently this is the only language your empire understands. The transmission cut off, leaving Thaxon staring at his rapidly disintegrating command structure. Throughout the empire, panic spread as the truth became clear they hadn't just started a war. They had awakened a technological giant that had been pretending to be small, and now it was stretching its muscles simply because they had been foolish enough to give it a reason. The Zendarian homeworld sparkled like a jewel in space, its 3 moons aligned in a defensive formation that had protected the seat of their empire for 10,000 years. High Council leader Rixus stood in the Planetary Defense Command Center, watching as the last remnants of their fleet gathered for what everyone knew would be their final stand. Status of the evacuation, he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. 70% of civilians have reached the underground shelters, General Nixus reported. The rest are en route. But sir, given what we've seen of human capabilities, will it matter? Before Rixus could respond, space rippled. The human fleet arrived not through conventional faster-than-light travel, but by simply deciding that the space they occupied and the space around Zendaria Prime were the same point. Hundreds of vessels, from city-sized cruisers to the moon-dwarfing Dragon-class ships, surrounded the planet in perfect formation. They're hailing us, the communications officer announced. All frequencies, all languages, even being broadcast directly into our quantum network. Put it through. The holographic display showed a human woman in what appeared to be casual clothing. No military uniform, no signs of rank, just comfortable garments that suggested she was having a relaxed day at home. "This is Director Elizabeth Blackwood of the Earth Diplomatic Corps," she announced. "I'll be handling the final negotiations for your surrender." Rixus drew himself up to his full height. "The Zendarian Empire does not surrender. We have ruled this sector since before your species learned to make fire." "Actually," Elizabeth replied, checking something on a handheld device, "according to our archaeological records, humanity had mastered fire roughly 800,000 years before your empire formed. We just chose not to mention that during our previous diplomatic exchanges." She looked up from her device, her expression softening. "But that's not important right now. What's important is that you understand exactly what's happening here." The space around Zendaria Prime shifted. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, and suddenly they weren't looking at warships anymore. They were looking at the true form of the human vessels. "By the first egg," someone whispered. The ships weren't ships at all. They were physical manifestations of mathematical concepts, geometric shapes that existed in dimensions the Zendarian mind couldn't fully comprehend. What they had thought were weapons were actually branches of a vast technological tree that extended through multiple realities simultaneously. "You see," Elizabeth continued, "the term dragons isn't just a reference to Earth mythology. It's an acronym: dimensional resonance and geometric optimization networks. Every ship you see isn't just a vessel, it's a node in a vast quantum computing network that spans multiple universes." She gestured, and one of the Dragon-class ships demonstrated its true nature. It didn't move through space, it adjusted the fundamental properties of space itself, creating a localized bubble where the laws of physics were more of a polite suggestion. "We could end this right now," Elizabeth said. "We could phase your entire civilization into a parallel dimension where you never develop spaceflight. We could rewrite your history so the Zendarian Empire never existed. We could do to your entire species what you tried to do to our colonies." Rixus felt his heart sink. "Then why haven't you?" Elizabeth smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it. "Because that's not who we choose to be. Humanity developed this technology, these capabilities, over centuries. And with each advancement, we faced a choice: become conquerors or become guardians. We chose to be guardians." The display shifted, showing images of the human colonies that Zendarian forces had destroyed. "Those colonies you attacked. They weren't military installations or resource extraction points. They were research stations working on ways to share our technology safely with other species, ways to help younger civilizations develop without the growing pains we went through." "You expect us to believe," that General Nixus scoffed, "that you hid your power out of benevolence?" "Computer," Elizabeth called out, "show them Project Uplift." The space around Zendaria Prime lit up with new mathematical patterns. Data streamed through quantum channels, showing research projects, technological developments, carefully planned stages of technological sharing. "Every species we've encountered," Elizabeth explained, "we've studied, protected, and subtly guided, not toward being like us, but toward being the best version of themselves. We've prevented 17 interstellar wars by simply being in the right place at the right time with the right diplomatic solution. We've saved 32 species from extinction-level events without them even knowing we were there." She leaned forward. "The dragons aren't weapons, High Council Leader Rixus. They're tools. Tools we develop not to dominate, but to protect, to nurture, to guide." "Then what are your terms?" Rixus asked, finally understanding the magnitude of their mistake. "First, immediate cessation of all military activities and full withdrawal from occupied territories. Second, your entire military infrastructure will be repurposed for peaceful scientific research. Will help with that. Third, and most importantly, you're going to join us." "Join you?" "Yes, because despite what you did to our colonies, we see potential in your species. You're not evil, you're just young. Arrogant, like we were once. So we're offering you the chance to learn, to grow, to become part of something greater than an empire." The Dragon-class ships moved in perfect synchronization, creating a pattern of quantum energy around the planet that looked suspiciously like a protective embrace. "So what's it going to be?" Elizabeth asked. "Continue this pointless resistance against a force you can't comprehend, or take the first step toward becoming something more than conquerors?" Rixus looked at his generals, at the displays showing the true nature of human technology, at the careful precision with which they had dismantled his empire while taking painfully few lives. He thought of the civilians in the shelters below, of the future they could have. "We surrender," he said, then corrected himself. "No, we accept your offer." Elizabeth's smile brightened. "Wonderful. Now let's talk about converting those doomsday weapons of yours into public transportation infrastructure. You wouldn't believe how efficient quantum tunneling is for commuter trains." As negotiations began, Rixus couldn't help but appreciate the irony. They had bombed human colonies thinking they were destroying a weak enemy. Instead, they had awakened sleeping giants who turned out to be not destroyers, but teachers. Not conquerors, but mentors. The dragons were awake, yes, but they weren't here to burn the galaxy. They were here to light the way forward. 10 years after the surrender, former Admiral Krax stood at the observation deck of the Dimensional Studies Academy on what used to be his flagship. The ultimate victory, once the pride of the Zendarian fleet, now served as a prestigious learning center where species from across the galaxy studied humanity's quantum sciences. "Quite a view. Isn't it?" a familiar voice asked. Krax turned to find Amanda Reeves, no longer a prisoner but the Academy's dean, joining him at the viewport. Beyond the reinforced windows, students from a dozen species practiced basic quantum manipulation, their exercises creating patterns of light that danced through multiple dimensions. "Sometimes I still can't believe how wrong we were," Krax admitted. "We thought we were the apex of civilization. We thought our technology was unmatched. We were like children playing with sticks, thinking we were master swordsmen." Amanda nodded, watching as a young Zendarian student successfully phased a small object through a solid wall. "You know what the funny thing is? We were terrified when we first developed this technology. Humanity looked at its own history, saw how often advanced civilizations had oppressed less developed ones, and we swore we wouldn't repeat those mistakes. So you hid your power. Played weak." "We played peaceful," she corrected. "There's a difference. Everything we showed the galaxy was real: our desire for friendship, our enthusiasm for cultural exchange, our willingness to learn from others. We just didn't show everything we were capable of." Alert chimed softly. Above them, space rippled as a Dragon-class vessel phased into view. These days, the sight inspired wonder rather than terror. The massive ship was returning from its latest mission, preventing a rogue comet from striking a pre-spaceflight civilization's homeworld. "The price of awakening dragons," Krax mused, "wasn't what we expected. We thought we'd face extinction. Instead, we faced education." Amanda laughed. "Well, some might say that's worse. Just ask your former weapons engineers how they felt about learning basic quantum ethics." The view changed as their section of the station rotated, showing them Earth in the distance. The cradle of humanity no longer hid its true nature. Orbital rings sparkled with quantum energy, research stations folded through multiple dimensions, and ships of all species came and went freely through carefully maintained dimensional corridors. "You know what the biggest lesson was?" Krax asked, his voice thoughtful. "Not the technology, not the science. It was understanding that true power isn't about having the biggest weapons or the strongest shields. Oh, it's about having the wisdom to know when not to use them. The strength to show mercy. The patience to guide rather than dominate." He gestured to his students below. 10 years ago, I would have seen teaching our technology to other species as a sign of weakness. Now I understand it's the ultimate expression of strength. The dragon ships continued their eternal dance through the quantum seas of space, no longer hidden, but no less majestic. They weren't weapons of war but tools of progress, not instruments of destruction but architects of harmony. "The humans have a saying," Amanda noted. "With great power comes great responsibility." Indeed, Krax straightened his teaching robes. "And speaking of responsibility, I have a class to teach. Today's topic: why bombing supposedly primitive colonies is a spectacularly bad idea." Amanda grinned. "Still giving that lecture? For a year. Someone has to ensure the next generation learns from our mistakes." He paused at the door. "Though I did update the title. It's now called How I Accidentally Helped Humanity Create a Better Galaxy by Being Monumentally Stupid." As Krax headed to his classroom, he passed a memorial to the colonial attack that had started it all. The plaque read, "Here marks the day the dragons woke, not to destroy, but to build. Not to conquer, but to teach. Not to rule, but to guide." The galaxy had learned its lesson. The dragons were awake, and they had transformed the cosmos not through fire and fury, but through wisdom and grace. It turned out that underestimating humanity hadn't led to the end of civilization. It had led to its rebirth.